This idea of, depression is essentially thinking about yourself too much. Last time we spoke on the podcast, you talked about...
I would say, that feels to me maybe a little bit too harsh, because I think people suffer with depression, and it's a disease, and it's incredibly serious. And we think of suicide as being something that stands alone. It's not. It's a symptom of a disease called depression, right? So it's the permanent solution to a temporary problem. You don't want to feel this way anymore, but actually you don't want to feel nothing anymore. You'd like to feel better. So it's that thing of like, I don't think we talk about it enough, but I think that thing of, thinking about yourself all the time, I think it just can lead to a melancholy, a sadness. I think depression is maybe a slightly separate thing. Not to nitpick, but it feels like that's a disease.
Yeah.
And there's also a lot of sadness in the world. Mm. And you're lucky if you're sad. Because if you're sad, it's circumstantial and you can do something about it. Are you depressed because you have a serotonin imbalance in your head and it's a heritable trait? Or are you sad because your life hasn't worked out the way you want it to work out? Well, if that's the case, the latter, you're in luck because you can change that.
It does feel like there's a bit of a crisis going on within young men at the moment. And I think your new show on Netflix shines a light on many of the difficulties that young men are facing. I was really excited to talk to you about this particular topic because I've been trying to arrive at a position myself on why so many young men appear to be lost and suicidality has increased, and there's, these new masculine influences or masculine influencers that are really rounding up this cohort of young men.
Who are we talking about? Andrew Tate?
Andrew Tates of the world.
Well, Andrew Tate's interesting, isn't he? Because who made I think John Mulaney made the observation, Trump is a poor person's idea of what a rich person looks like. Yeah, I've got gold taps. And I think sort of Andrew Tate is like a 14-year-old boy's idea of what masculinity might look like. Like it's really, and of course, nature abhors a vacuum. And there's a real vacuum for elders. Like we don't learn how to shave from our fathers. It's a YouTube video. And so you lose something in that bonding. So there's a big bit in the new show where I give a young guy, an audience member, a pretty tough time. Like we have the talk and I give them advice on how to be with a woman. And I'm not wrong about anything. It's really funny and it's really rude, but I'm not wrong about stuff. It's about consent, and I think it's really good because I've sugared the pill of the message because people don't want to talk about it. People go, it's obvious what consent is. Yeah, not to 17-year-old boys or girls. It's like, actually, what does that look like and how should that be? So it's a really fun routine. It's a really fun routine to perform and to write.
What is it to be a man these days? Because it's quite confusing in terms, even the conversation around like chivalry and understanding,
Well, people talk about toxic masculinity and easy fix. Be a gentleman, be a mensch. That's it. This is done. Be a gentleman, be a mensch. A gentleman is never rude by accident. It's Christopher Hitchens' line. Great. I don't know. I mean, my thing about young men today, if I was going to give young men advice, it would be get the right drugs and the real thing, right? In real life. Live in real life, right? So why young men are obsessed by video games, right? Obsessed. They're spending hours and hours and hours online playing video games. Why? Well, that's a proxy for career. Right, video games. You think about the levels of video games and what people do on video games. That's a proxy. That's like it's a substitute for the career that they're not having. And then they spend a lot of time, fapping to Pornhub or YouPorn or whatever. And that's a proxy for sex. And my thing would be, George Orwell wasn't right. Our power won't be taken away from us by some authoritarian master. We're going to give it away for cheap dopamine. And the cheap dopamine of video games and online porn and living online is getting in the way of real life. So it's risk, right? That's what we're not allowing young people to do, because we're saying to young people, you can't take risks in real life. We're helicopter parenting. We're not giving them the freedom. How much freedom should you give a kid? As much as they can cope with, right? 14-year-olds used to be babysitters. They now need babysitters. That's not good, right? So you should allow them more freedom in the real world, because otherwise, the only place they get freedom is online. and no freedom in the real world. You're not allowed to go to the park and hang out, but you're allowed to do whatever you want online. Well, that feels like a very bad social experiment. That feels like a bad idea. Yeah, it feels like we've inverted, Maslow, this pyramid, the hierarchy of needs, and you go, well, food and shelter and warmth and we've got all the bottom stuff worked out in our society, right? We kind of can't see it. We're not grateful for that because we can't see
The hot shower.
We can't see the third world, and we can't see the people in the past having a tougher time than us. So we take it for granted. But we've worked out that stuff. They hadn't worked that stuff out 200 years ago. But they had the top of the pyramid sorted. Everyone knew who they were. They had their identity, and they knew what their purpose was. Everyone knew who they were, what they were about, and they were connected to the others in the group. And now we're kind of free-floating individuals. We kind of worship the individual as if we can survive as individuals. I always think of that thing of like, there's no such thing as a baby. There's a baby and a mother, there's a baby and a father, baby and an auntie, but there's no such thing as a baby because a baby on its own isn't anything. It's dead. It needs taken care of. We're all still babies. We all need the connections. Yourself, yeah, sure, there's a lot of yourself that's within you, but a lot of it is out in the world. It's connected to other people, and it mediates who you think you are. And that's slightly missing from society where you kind of live online and you're kind of a self-authored thing. You're just on the computer, on the screen, and you're not connected and you're not taking risks. Taking risks is really important.
Is this in part due to the rise in atheism and agnosticism? I think we both, me and you, lost our sort of religious faith around the same age. I think sort of early...
Mid-20s. I think it's a weird thing where you can lose your... I certainly don't believe in the stories. There's two types of fools, right? There's people that take religion literally, and there's people that think it has no value. Okay? Both idiots for different reasons. Like, it works as a thing, religion. I miss it, because the reason the ceremony works isn't because God's pleased, it's because the people came together. And so I think we look for things that are proxies for religion. And sometimes that's football. It could be environmentalism, because you go, well, I need something, I need purpose in my life. I need to feel like I'm adding value. And what a great cause. I'm going to save the planet. It's a big thing to think about. It's got a religiosity to it. But I don't think that's necessarily the answer. Some people do it with politics. They think politics is going to be heaven. They're going to come up with some perfect system. I think you're putting too much pressure on politics.
First time I've ever said this, actually, but when you just said, I think I miss religion, I think I miss religion.